I proposed to Jessica on a magical evening at our favorite restaurant. After 2 years of dating, she said yes through tears of joy. We had it all planned, a spring wedding and the countryside honeymoon in Bali, and eventually starting a family in my new home. Everyone was thrilled, especially my parents who adored her. But something changed after I put that ring on her finger. Then came that email from her lawyer. If you are watching this from anywhere around the world, hit like and subscribe to hear how I discovered the truth about the woman I thought would be my wife. The day I met Jessica still feels vivid in my memory. I was at my friend Tom's birthday party nursing a beer and making small talk with people I barely knew. I work as a software engineer at a major tech company in Seattle. The job pays well, and I have always been smart with my money, investing early and buying property when I could. That night at Tom's, I was taking a break from the noise on the balcony when she walked up. "Too loud for you too?" she asked, leaning against the railing. Jessica worked in marketing for a cosmetics company. She had this infectious laugh and a way of talking about her job that made even the most mundane aspects sound fascinating. We spent the entire night talking about everything, our shared love for indie rock hiking trips and traveling to offbeat destinations. By the time the party ended, I had her number and a date planned for the following weekend. Our first date was at this small Italian restaurant downtown. I remember being nervous, changing my outfit 3 times before leaving my apartment. Jessica showed up wearing a simple blue dress that somehow made her look more beautiful than I remembered. The conversation flowed effortlessly, like we had known each other for years instead of days. "I never connect with someone this quickly," she told me over tiramisu. "It feels like we have been friends forever." I felt the same way. We shared the same sense of humor, similar goals, and compatible lifestyles. She was ambitious but also talked about wanting a family someday. I had always wanted that too, the stable home life I had growing up with my parents in Michigan before moving west for college and work. Within months, we were practically inseparable. Our relationship progressed naturally. Weekends spent exploring Seattle or taking day trips to the mountains. I introduced her to rock climbing, my favorite hobby, and she introduced me to cooking classes and wine tasting. We complemented each other perfectly, or so I thought. 6 months into dating, we took our first vacation together to Hawaii. I splurged on a beachfront resort, wanting to make the trip special. We spent mornings snorkeling with sea turtles, afternoons lounging on the beach, and evenings trying local restaurants. One night, walking along the moonlit beach, Jessica intertwined her fingers with mine and said I could get used to this life with you. Later that year, we spent Thanksgiving with my family in Michigan. My parents immediately took to Jessica. Mom pulled me aside during dish duty to tell me she thought Jessica was the one. My dad, usually reserved with his approval, invited her to join our traditional Black Friday fishing trip, an honor previously reserved only for family members. "Your family is amazing," Jessica told me on the flight back to Seattle. "I see where you get your values from." By our 1-year anniversary, I had started thinking about our future more seriously. I had recently purchased a 3-bedroom house in a nice neighborhood, thinking ahead to family possibilities. Jessica still had her apartment but stayed at my place most nights. We talked about her officially moving in but decided to wait a bit longer. "Let's give it a little more time," she suggested. Moving in together is a big step. I respected that she wanted to take things slowly. In retrospect, I should have paid more attention to her reluctance to give up her apartment, especially since she complained about the cost. As our second year together progressed, I became increasingly certain Jessica was the woman I wanted to marry. We had survived our first real fights and emerged stronger. We had traveled together, spent holidays with each other's families, and built a social circle of mutual friends. The next logical step seemed clear. I started researching engagement rings, setting aside money from my bonuses. I wanted something special but not ostentatious, something that matched Jessica's elegant but understated style. After weeks of searching, I found the perfect ring, a platinum band with a center diamond flanked by smaller sapphires, her favorite stone. The proposal took weeks to plan. I made reservations at Canlis, the restaurant where we had celebrated our first anniversary. I arranged for a private corner table with a view of Lake Union. I even coordinated with the staff to bring the ring out with dessert. The evening was perfect. Jessica looked stunning in a black dress I had never seen before. We reminisced about our relationship, sharing favorite memories and laughing about inside jokes. When dessert arrived, chocolate souffle with the ring box alongside it, her eyes widened. "Jessica," I said, taking the box and getting down on one knee beside the table. "These 2 years have been the happiest of my life. I want to spend every day making you as happy as you make me. Will you marry me?" Tears streamed down her face as she nodded, unable to speak momentarily. Finally, she whispered, "Yes, Bernie. Yes, I will marry you." The restaurant erupted in applause as I slipped the ring onto her finger. We spent the rest of the night calling friends and family to share the news. My parents were ecstatic. Her parents, whom I had met only twice, seemed pleased, but more reserved. I attributed that to their naturally conservative demeanor. The weeks following our engagement were a whirlwind of excitement and planning. Jessica created elaborate Pinterest boards for wedding ideas. We discussed potential venues, guest lists, and honeymoon destinations. I had always imagined a moderate-sized wedding, perhaps 100 guests at most, at a nice but reasonable venue. Jessica, however, had other ideas. "What do you think about the Woodmark Hotel?" she asked one evening, showing me pictures of an upscale lakeside venue. When I looked up the pricing later, I was shocked. The minimum expenditure for a Saturday wedding was nearly twice what I had budgeted for our entire celebration. When I gently mentioned this to Jessica, her enthusiasm dimmed. "I thought you were doing well at work," she said, a slight edge to her voice. "Do you not want our wedding to be special?" "Of course I want it to be special," I replied, surprised by her reaction. "But there are beautiful venues that do not cost as much as a down payment on a house." She eventually agreed to look at alternatives, but the pattern continued, with every aspect of wedding planning. The dress she wanted, the photographer, the flowers. Her tastes consistently ran toward the most expensive options. Each time I suggested more affordable alternatives, she seemed disappointed. Then came the financial questions. They started innocently enough, asking about my savings, investments, retirement accounts. I assumed this was natural pre-marriage financial disclosure, though I noticed she was vague about her own finances when I asked. "Do you have student loans or credit card debt we should know about?" I asked one night over dinner. "Just some student loans," she replied dismissively. "Nothing major." "What about your stock options at work? When do they vest completely?" Looking back, I should have seen these as warning signs, but I was blinded by love and excitement about our future together. I chalked up her extravagant wedding desires to typical bride enthusiasm and her financial questions to prudent planning. I could not have been more wrong. It was a Tuesday morning in March, about 4 months after our engagement, and 5 months before our planned August wedding. I was at my desk, deep into coding a new feature, when an email notification popped up on my screen. The sender was unknown to me. David Goldstein, from Goldstein Legal Partners. The subject line read, "Prenuptial Agreement, Jessica Winters and Bernard Collins." I stared at my screen, confused. Jessica and I had briefly discussed potentially having a simple prenup, as we both brought assets into the relationship. But she had never mentioned hiring a lawyer, let alone sending me a document, without discussing it first. I opened the email and downloaded the attached PDF. As I began reading, my confusion turned to shock, then disbelief, and finally a sinking feeling in my stomach that I can only describe as betrayal. The document was 27 pages of legal language that essentially protected everything Jessica owned, now and in the future, while giving her access to assets we would accumulate during marriage. My property, including my house, would become partially hers if she moved in, which was our plan after marriage, but her apartment would remain solely her property. My retirement accounts would be considered for division in case of divorce, but hers would be excluded. Even more shocking, any inheritance I received from my family would be considered marital property while any she received would remain solely hers. The agreement even stipulated that I would be responsible for 80% of household expenses during the marriage, regardless of our respective incomes. There were clauses about supporting her if she decided to quit her job, but nothing reciprocal if I faced employment challenges. The more I read, the more my hands shook. This was not a mutual protection agreement. It was a one-sided document, designed to ensure Jessica got everything and risked nothing. The final insult was discovering the document required my signature within 7 days, with a note that any amendments would need to be approved by both parties' legal representation. I reached for my phone and called Jessica immediately. She did not pick up. I sent her a text. "Just got an email from your lawyer. Can we talk about this prenup tonight?" Her response came an hour later. "Sure. It is just standard protection for both of us." I could barely focus on work for the rest of the day. My mind raced with questions. Why would Jessica do this behind my back? Why was the agreement so one-sided? Had she been planning this all along? The Jessica I thought I knew would never try to take advantage of me this way. Had I been blind to her true nature the entire time? By the time I got home that evening, I had worked myself into a state of controlled anger. I waited tensely for Jessica to arrive, rehearsing what I would say. When she finally walked in around 7 o'clock, she greeted me with a kiss, as if nothing was wrong. "So you wanted to talk about the prenup?" she asked, casually setting her purse down on the kitchen counter. "Jessica, this document is completely one-sided," I said, trying to keep my voice level. "It protects everything of yours while putting all of my assets at risk. Why would you have this drafted without discussing it with me first?" She rolled her eyes slightly. "Bernie, you are overreacting. This is standard language to protect both of us. My friend Melissa had something similar when she got married. I had our broker look it over today. I lied, wanting to gauge her reaction. He said it is the most unbalanced prenup he has ever seen." Her expression hardened. "Since when does your investment broker give legal advice? Maybe you should have an actual lawyer review it instead of getting amateur opinions. Why did you not talk to me before having a lawyer draft this?" "Because I knew you would get emotional about it," she snapped. "Look, I have worked hard for what I have. I cannot just risk everything without protection." "What exactly are you protecting, Jessica?" I asked. "You rent your apartment. You have told me yourself that you have minimal savings and some student debt. Meanwhile, this agreement makes claims on my house, my retirement accounts, and even potential future inheritance from my parents." That was when I saw a flash of something in her eyes I had never seen before. Calculation, coldness. "You make 3 times what I make, Bernie," she said, her voice taking on a defensive edge. "I am just trying to ensure I am not left vulnerable. By making sure I am vulnerable instead. By demanding I pay 80% of our expenses regardless of circumstance. By claiming parts of my inheritance but keeping yours separate." We argued for nearly 2 hours. With each passing minute, I saw more clearly that the woman standing before me was not the person I thought I knew. When I pressed her about specific clauses, she either dismissed my concerns or claimed she had not read every detail and that her lawyer had used standard language. By the end of the night, we had reached an impasse. Jessica insisted I sign the agreement with perhaps minor adjustments. I refused to consider it in its current form. We went to bed angry, sleeping as far apart as possible on the mattress we had picked out together just months before. The next day, I called in sick to work and made an appointment with a family law attorney, Thomas Weber. I brought the prenup with me and asked for his professional assessment. Thomas read through the document carefully, occasionally making notes. When he finished, he looked up at me with concern in his eyes. "Mr. Collins, I do not want to alarm you, but this is one of the most one-sided prenuptial agreements I have seen in my 22 years of practice. It essentially provides complete protection for your fiancée, while leaving you financially exposed on multiple fronts." He pointed out clauses I had missed, including one that would entitle Jessica to alimony after just 2 years of marriage, regardless of the reason for divorce. Another section gave her partial ownership of any business I might start during our marriage, without any corresponding risk or investment on her part. If you were my client, I would strongly advise against signing this document in its current form, Thomas said. I would also be concerned about what this reveals regarding your fiancé's intentions. I left his office with a heaviness in my chest I had never experienced before. On the drive home, I called my best friend Adam and asked if I could come over. I needed to talk to someone who knew both Jessica and me. Adam listened patiently as I explained the situation, showing him sections of the prenup on my phone. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "Bernie, I need to tell you something," he finally said. "I never wanted to interfere in your relationship, but Sarah and I have had concerns about Jessica for a while." Sarah was Adam's wife and had been friends with Jessica before I even met her. "What kind of concerns?" I asked. Adam looked uncomfortable. "Sarah noticed that Jessica tends to, well, focus on what people can provide for her. Before you, she dated that surgeon, Brian, remember? And before him, there was some finance guy. Sarah said she always talked about finding someone established and successful. This was news to me. Jessica had mentioned previous relationships but never emphasized their financial status. Also, Adam continued reluctantly at your engagement party. Sarah overheard Jessica on the phone telling someone that she had finally secured a good one and that she would not have to worry about money anymore. We thought maybe it was just wedding excitement talk, but with this prenup thing, each word felt like a physical blow. I thanked Adam for his honesty and drove home in a day's memories of my relationship with Jessica, replaying in my mind with this new disturbing perspective. When I got home, I did something I had never done before and never thought I would do. I opened Jessica's laptop, which she often left at my house. I felt terrible invading her privacy, but I needed to know if my suspicions were justified. Her email was logged in. I searched for communications with her lawyer and found the original correspondence about the prenup. In the email thread, Jessica had specifically requested many of the one-sided provisions, including access to my assets while protecting hers. She had written, "I need to ensure I am fully protected, while maximizing potential benefits from Bernie's more substantial assets and income." Reading those words in her own writing made me physically ill. I closed the laptop and sat in silence, trying to process this betrayal. The next day, through mutual friends, I discovered more about Jessica's past. Her previous boyfriend, Brian, had ended their relationship after discovering she had substantial credit card debt she had hidden from him, debt she had apparently expected him to help pay off after marriage. The finance guy before Brian had similar stories. I also learned from Sarah that Jessica's supposedly minimal student loans were actually over $70,000, and she had maxed out 3 credit cards. The carefully cultivated image of financial responsibility she had presented to me was a complete fabrication. Through social media connections, I even found her ex-boyfriend before the finance guy, a wealthy real estate developer, 20 years her senior. According to mutual acquaintances, Jessica had followed the same pattern with him, pushing for marriage and financial entanglements before he discovered her true intentions. The woman I loved, the woman I had planned to spend my life with, had been targeting me from the beginning for financial security. All the loving moments, the shared dreams, the intimate connections, I could no longer trust that any of it had been genuine. The revelation was devastating. After a week of minimal communication with Jessica, I asked her to come over for dinner on Friday night. I needed to confront her with everything I had learned. I spent hours preparing what I would say, determined to remain calm and rational despite my broken heart. She arrived looking apprehensive, but trying to act normal. I had made her favorite pasta dish, but neither of us had much appetite as we sat across from each other at the dining table. I had my own lawyer review the prenup. I began getting straight to the point. He said it is predatory and completely one-sided. Jessica sighed dramatically. "Bernie, you are making this into such a big deal. We can revise it if certain parts bother you that much." I also spoke with Sarah. I continued watching her face carefully. "And Brian. And I know about the credit card debt you have been hiding." Her expression froze, then shifted to anger. "You have been investigating me, talking to my ex. How dare you? How dare I? How dare you present yourself as someone you are not? How dare you try to trap me in a financial arrangement that only benefits you while claiming it was about love? That is not fair," she protested, but her voice lacked conviction. "I do love you. Do you love me, or do you love the financial security I represent?" I asked. "Because from where I am sitting, it seems like you have a pattern of targeting men with money and trying to secure your future at their expense." The argument escalated quickly. Jessica alternated between denial, attacking me for not trusting her, and attempting to justify her actions. When cornered with specific evidence, she tried emotional manipulation, crying and asking how I could think so poorly of the woman I wanted to marry. "I will not sign that prenup, Jessica," I finally stated firmly. "Not in its current form, not in any form that unfairly benefits you while putting me at risk." Her tears dried up remarkably quickly. "Then I need time to think about whether this marriage is right for me." "No," I said, surprising myself with my clarity and resolve. "You need to decide right now. Either we create a truly fair agreement that protects both of us equally, or we call off the wedding. I will not start a marriage based on deception and financial exploitation." Jessica stood up, her face cold and unrecognizable. "You obviously do not trust me or value what I bring to this relationship. Perhaps we are not as compatible as we thought." "Perhaps we are not," I agreed, feeling strangely calm, despite the collapse of my future plans. "Perhaps you should return the engagement ring, since you seem to care more about what I own than who I am." Her eyes flashed with anger. "Fine," she said, twisting the ring off her finger and slamming it down on the table. "You will regret this, Bernie. Good luck finding someone who cares about you as much as I do." With that, she grabbed her purse and stormed out. I sat at the table for hours afterward, staring at the ring and wondering how I could have been so blind. The next morning, I received a text from Jessica: "Wedding's off. We'll send for my things next week." That was it. 2 years together, months of engagement, thousands of dollars in deposits for the venue, photographer, and caterer, all ended with a 3-word text. No discussion, no attempt to reconcile, just a cold finality that confirmed everything I had begun to suspect about her true character. The initial shock left me numb. I moved through the following days in a fog, mechanically canceling wedding arrangements and losing deposits I could not recoup. I called close friends and family to inform them of the broken engagement. My parents were heartbroken but supportive, telling me they were proud of me for standing up for myself. "You dodged a bullet, son," my father said. "Better to lose some money now than half of everything later." I took a week off work, unable to focus on code when my personal life had imploded so spectacularly. I alternated between questioning my judgment and feeling intense relief that I had discovered Jessica's true nature before legally binding myself to her. The emotional whiplash was exhausting. The practical aftermath was equally challenging. Jessica's things were scattered throughout my house. Clothes in the closet, toiletries in the bathroom, books on the shelves. I packed everything into boxes, unable to bear seeing these reminders of her presence. As promised, she sent 2 friends to collect her belongings while she was conveniently out of town. She never set foot in my house again. Then came the social fallout. Mutual friends felt forced to choose sides. Some immediately supported me when they heard about the prenup situation. Others, particularly Jessica's friends from before our relationship, distanced themselves or even sent accusatory messages about how I had led her on or not been willing to compromise. Jessica controlled the narrative in certain circles, painting herself as the victim who only wanted reasonable protection and portraying me as financially controlling. The falseness of this story was infuriating, but I refused to engage in a public battle over our private matters. Instead, I focused on regaining control of my life. I closed our joint bank account, which thankfully held only a small amount for wedding expenses. I changed the passwords on all my accounts after discovering Jessica had access to more of my information than I realized. I removed her as an authorized user on my credit card, which revealed she had been making substantial personal purchases I had been unknowingly paying off. The most painful task was addressing the wedding cancellation with our invited guests. I drafted a brief, dignified email explaining that Jessica and I had ended our engagement and thanking everyone for their understanding. I avoided details or blame, though many friends and family reached out privately to offer support and ask what had happened. As the shock wore off, I faced a difficult decision about the honeymoon. We had planned 2 weeks in Bali, with flights and accommodations already paid for, and mostly non-refundable. After consideration, I decided to go alone. The idea of transforming what should have been a romantic newlywed trip into a solo journey of healing appealed to me on a symbolic level. I would not let Jessica's betrayal rob me of this experience too. This decision marked a turning point in my recovery. Instead of seeing myself as a victim of deception, I began viewing the situation as an opportunity for growth and self-discovery. The broken engagement had revealed weaknesses in my judgment and boundaries that needed addressing. Rather than wallowing in pain and regret, I could use this experience to become stronger and wiser. With this new perspective, I began rebuilding my life, one piece at a time. I redecorated my house, removing the feminine touches Jessica had added, and creating a space that truly reflected my own tastes and preferences. I reconnected with old friends I had somewhat neglected during my relationship. I recommitted to rock climbing, joining a local club, and challenging myself with increasingly difficult routes. Most importantly, I sought professional help to process the betrayal. My therapist helped me understand that Jessica's deception reflected her character flaws, not my worth. We worked through my tendency to overlook red flags in relationships and developed strategies for establishing healthier boundaries in the future. You cannot prevent people from trying to take advantage of you, my therapist told me, but you can get better at recognizing the warning signs earlier and responding appropriately. This insight proved invaluable as I slowly regained my trust in my own judgment and began to consider dating again. The experience with Jessica had not hardened my heart against love, but it had certainly made me more discerning about the character of potential partners. A year has passed since that fateful prenup arrived in my inbox. Looking back, I can honestly say that while the experience was painful, it ultimately led to positive growth in my life. Professionally, I channeled my energy into work and earned a significant promotion. The focus and dedication that emerged from my personal disappointment translated into career success I might not have achieved otherwise. I used some of my increased income to accelerate payments on my mortgage, taking satisfaction in building financial security on my own terms. I also made time for personal development. I took cooking classes, improved my Spanish language skills, and even tried salsa dancing. These activities not only broadened my horizons, but also introduced me to new social circles beyond those I had shared with Jessica. The trip to Bali that was meant to be our honeymoon became a transformative solo adventure. Without Jessica's carefully planned itinerary of luxury resorts and Instagram-worthy locations, I explored the island more authentically. I stayed in local guest houses, learned to surf, meditated in ancient temples, and had meaningful conversations with travelers from around the world. The journal I kept during those 2 weeks remains one of my most treasured possessions, a record of my journey from heartbreak to healing. Upon returning home, I felt truly ready to close the Jessica chapter of my life. The final step was dealing with the engagement ring which had sat in my dresser drawer since the night she returned it. After some consideration, I sold it and donated half the money to a financial literacy program for young adults. The irony of using the symbol of our broken engagement to help others make wise financial decisions was not lost on me. The remaining money funded a weekend trip with my parents to thank them for their unwavering support during my darkest days. About 6 months after the breakup, I began dating again cautiously. I had a few pleasant but ultimately unmemorable dates, until I met Rachel at a friend's dinner party. Unlike Jessica, Rachel was transparent about her life, including her finances. A pediatric nurse, with a modest income and straightforward goals, she valued experiences over possessions and authenticity over appearances. Our relationship developed slowly, built on a foundation of honest communication. When I eventually shared my experience with Jessica and the prenup, Rachel was sympathetic but not surprised. Unfortunately, there are people who see relationships as financial transactions, she said. I am sorry you had to learn that lesson the hard way. With Rachel, discussions about money are open and equitable. We split expenses according to our relative incomes and make decisions together about saving and spending. There is no manipulation, no hidden agenda, just two adults building a partnership based on mutual respect and genuine affection. I occasionally hear about Jessica through mutual acquaintances. Within 3 months of our broken engagement, she was dating a successful real estate developer. They became engaged quickly, and I sometimes wonder if he received a similar prenup or if she learned to be more subtle in her approach. Regardless, her life is no longer my concern, and I wish her no ill will. The experience taught me valuable lessons I might not have learned otherwise. The most important lesson was learning to trust my instincts. Looking back, there were subtle signs of Jessica's true priorities that I chose to ignore. Her excessive interest in my career, prospects, her reluctance to contribute equally to our dates, despite having a good job, her dismissal of friends who did not have impressive careers or lifestyles. I was so enamored with the image of our perfect relationship that I failed to see the cracks in the foundation. I also learned the vital importance of financial transparency in relationships. Money discussions may not be romantic, but they reveal core values and priorities. Now I approach these conversations directly and expect the same honesty in return. A partner who becomes defensive or evasive about financial matters is showing you something important about their character. Perhaps most significantly, this experience taught me that losing something that was wrong for you creates space for what is right. Had I discovered Jessica's true nature after marriage, the emotional and financial damage would have been exponentially worse. As painful as the broken engagement was, it was also a blessing in disguise. Today I am happier and more self-aware than I was with Jessica. I have built a life that reflects my authentic values rather than someone else's expectations. My relationship with Rachel continues to grow in healthy, positive ways. We recently started discussing moving in together, a step we are approaching with thoughtfulness and clear communication about expectations. I share this story not to disparage Jessica or to portray myself as a victim, but to help others recognize warning signs in their own relationships. Look beyond the surface compatibility and pay attention to how your partner approaches money, how they treat others who cannot benefit them, and whether their actions consistently match their words. These indicators reveal character far more reliably than romantic gestures or declarations of love. Have you ever ignored red flags in a relationship because you wanted it to work? What were the signs you wish you had paid attention to sooner? Share your experiences in the comments below. If my story helped you in any way, please like and subscribe to support this channel. Remember that sometimes what feels like the end of your world is actually the beginning of a better one. Thank you for listening, and I wish you wisdom and discernment in all your relationships.